welcome to the next episode of My First Attempt, where I try new craft art for various projects for the first time to see what it's really like for a beginner. Today I am taking on resin. Why resin? Well, it's a super popular art form. You see it everywhere, and I may or may not have bought a bunch of resin, a couple different variety packs, about a year and a half ago. So I always joke, you write the book you need while I'm making the YouTube channel. I need to actually try all the craft projects I've been meaning to do. First step, I did a lot of research and I gathered all of my supplies. So first I've got my resin. This is just one I got on Amazon. I don't know if it's good, bad, whatever. It just is what it is. It's for casting. It did come with some cups and stir sticks and gloves, but these are in milliliters, and I'm in the United States, so you know how we are. We have to make life complicated. So I actually have cups that are ounces that I'll be using instead, but I can still use the popsicle sticks. I also need a mold or something to cast into. So I've got these, I got on Amazon. They're silicone molds because resin doesn't stick to silicone. And I don't have any official mold release, but according to Google, you could use vegetable or mineral oil. So I do have some vegetable oil I have in the thing that I use for grilling. I stole from the kitchen. I'll try to get some actual mold release to see if that works better. Safety, I do have gloves. And then parchment paper for my work surface and to cover it up because, again, I've heard it's sticky. Never used it, so your guess is as good as mine at this stage. Then you need some colors. I have resin pigment and some glitter. I also have a ruler, which I'll explain why in a minute, measuring cups, and then I also have a heat gun. We will not use this until it's time to address if we have any bubbles, which I'm guessing by how many pins I've seen, there's a lot of bubble issues. I now have my parchment paper down in my area, and I'm ready for the first step of pouring resin. I first need to know how much resin do I actually need. There's a couple different ways you can do this. The first is just take measurements. So for example, I know that these molds are 4 inches wide by 4 inches and 5/8 inch deep. I just used a ruler and measured. Then I figure out there's a 1/4 inch by 3.5 by 3.5 for this little inset. So I took the outer measurement, deducted the inside to get how big this is. So according to my math, it was 6.9 cubic inches. But how many ounces do I need? Well, you take it times 0.554 to convert to ounces, which came out to be 3.84. So if we take that times 4, it's going to be about 15 ounces if I were doing 4. So I poured water into all 4 of these, poured it in my measuring cup, and you can see I'm somewhere between 14 and 15 ounces. It's probably not exact because, again, you have to get the spillage, overflow, a little extra, but it's pretty darn close. And the reason I'm showing this method too, is just taking measurements, is that if you get the weird molds, like these, geodes or odd shapes, it's not quite as simple to do the math as it is to do the math for the basic rectangle or square. And for those that are in the rest of the world, your life is pretty simple. 1 centimeter cubed or cubic centimeter is 1 milliliter. You make life simple. My life is not quite as easy. So for today, I'm only going to make 2 coasters because I don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to go through that much resin in case this goes horribly wrong. But again, one would kind of be pointless, so we'll make a pair. As I said, I figured out that I needed 3.84 ounces. So that would be, let's do some quick math. We did our quick math, I'm back, and it is 7.7 ounces. So that's how much resin that we're going to need. Now the kicker is I could have done life easier and not even done that math because the resin I got is 1-to-1 ratio. So make sure you read your instructions. Is it 2-to-1, 1-to-1, 1-to-3? Can you measure it? Do you need to weigh it? There's all sorts of options out there. I did read my instructions and it's measuring in a measuring cup 1-to-1. So for example, I know I just need that 3.84 ounces for each cup because it's times 2. I have my stir sticks and my cups. And I like blue. It's my favorite color. So we're going to do blue. And I also have some glitter because you got to be a little extra. Can't make life simple. So I bought this actually to use for my polyacrylic for my porch boards and other things I create that I want a little sparkle and sheen to. So I actually have a mason jar I keep with polyacrylic in it and add some glitter additive to it. So I figured it's for both, so I'll use it for this too. So one of the key trips I've heard is that everybody's like, you need to get everything prepped before you start to mix. Because then once you start to mix, there's a timeline because it does start to harden and cure, which is the point. So you don't want to end up with like trying to get everything else ready. So we're going to spray. I think this is how you do this. I don't know. But this doesn't look, did I put too much on? You may get some extra special coasters with a texture to them. That'll be something I'll have to figure out. Or maybe find some more fine misted spray, or was the vegetable oil the wrong idea? Who knows? We'll find out. Maybe I'll do one with the vegetable oil and one without. It's a good thing I have extras. There. Now we can compare. So next is, I was going to do the first little bit of clear first. So I have 1 cup. Then my second cup, I was going to do a little bit of the glitter. And then I wanted to do the bottom, the dark blue, so it kind of had that layered look to it. So I have 3 cups. Get on my gloves. And I am in a very large room. And next door you can't see. Next door you can't see is my kitchen and vents and everything. So you're supposed to be in a well ventilated area. So this is actually a pretty big space. Normally I would open windows, but it's kind of a blizzardy today. And I think it's about 0, give or take, a degree or 2. I mean, really, 0, 2 degrees Fahrenheit, who cares at that stage? But I'm going to start with the clear layer. And if I want about a third, if it's 7.7, so we're going to say, or 3.8, I'm going to need about 1.2 ounces. So 1.2 is somewhere between 1 and 1.5 for the clear. So we'll just do that. Or maybe we'll do more. We'll do 1.5 and 1.5 for this first layer. Probably not the smartest thing one does. Don't try that at home. Maybe get an actual pair of scissors or a knife. And we're back, and our resin is now open. And I used scissors instead of my ink pen. Be smarter, don't make life harder. So we have our measuring cup. So I'm going to very gingerly pour part A into this. If you read the instructions, it goes on and on about plus or minus 5% and too much A, too much B. I'm like, okay, that's a lot. So just be prepared. It's a bit of a science. So I'm thinking I have to, when I pour this in, stir as I go. And I think I accidentally added too much. Now it's settled. It looks like I'm about between 1.5 and 2. So that would be 4, so about 1.5, would probably be 3.5, a little smidgen over 3.5. It looks pretty darn close to what it should be. Let's do a sanity check. In my bottles that started are still equal. So I read you have to very slowly stir this to avoid air bubbles. And then to make sure, to get rid of all the cloudiness and all your air bubbles, and to make sure you scrape the sides, scrape the bottom good, to get it all mixed together. So I'm going to stir for a little while now. So I've got it looking pretty mixed together, but there's a lot of air bubbles, even though I tried to go slow. So I read somewhere where if you give it a second or two and let it rest, it kind of lets the air bubbles float to the top. So we'll try it, give it about a minute, and then come back and see if any of them do float to the top. And it's a warning, this is an old painting fleece sweatshirt, so that way if you get any on you, you're not emotional about wearing good clothes. So we'll give this another minute, and I'll stir a little more, and we'll see if we're ready to pour. I keep stirring, and I still have air bubbles. I'm sure there's tips and tricks of how to get rid of them. I know you could use a heat gun when we get it poured. I'm not that patient, so maybe this is, I think this is definitely an art of patience. But they're little air bubbles, so we'll pour, then we'll come back, and we're told that the heat gun is great for getting rid of them. So we'll go ahead and pour. And another words of wisdom I read is that you got to be slow and deliberate with your pour. So pour a little in each one. we got the first pour in. I got a little off to the sides or edges I'd have to go back and clean up. This is just a baby wipe or Clorox wipe. Okay, now we have the first layer of resin in, and there's little bitty air bubbles. So I'm going to try the heat gun, and we'll get that plugged in. I'll be right back and we'll see how that works. I'm back with the heat gun. I got it plugged in, so we'll go ahead. Let it warm up. I got rid of some, but not quite all. So I'm going to try to go see if I can pop some of the bigger ones. So I got to get a few of those popped. So that'll definitely be one of your struggles, is trying to make sure you have all your air bubbles popped. This is definitely starting to look better, so we'll go ahead and work on our next. So I know I used about 3.5 to fill the base up. So now we're going to need about another 3.5 for the next 2 layers. So I'm going to need about half of that. So say 1.5 for glitter, because the glitter will kind of mix in. So it's about 3/4 of an ounce for glitter. So I'll do a little bit of A. And since I'm just layering, I'm just going to use the same container. Another sanity check, and my containers are still the same width. Time to stir again, so we'll be back once we're done stirring. Okay, our resin is not cloudy anymore, but it's definitely got some air bubbles. I guess the positive is I'm adding glitter. So here is my glitter. And FYI, I don't really know how much I'm supposed to add. We're just going to wing it. So we'll just pour a little in. Let's see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. So I just poured a little in. I'm sure the more you do this, it's like anything, the more you do something, the more you kind of get a process or a system down to figure out how much of something you're supposed to add or not add. And they make all sorts of additives and glitters and colors and micas, and then you could put different objects in glitter. I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen it mixed with wood and concrete and gold and alcohol ink. But again, I'm trying to keep it a little simple for myself because this is my first time and I don't want to go too wild and crazy. Although it gets the positive mixing the glitter and all the chunkiness help break up all the bubbles. Win-win. My glitter's all mixed. So now we know we got to pour about 3/4 in each one. So put a little in this. So I probably needed more glitter, less clear, which I do, but I accidentally overmixed. Next, we're going to add our final and last coat in a second. I'm going to go ahead and go over this with the heat gun one more time to make sure that we got air bubbles out. Another tip of trick, don't get too close with the heat gun or you may accidentally spill some off to the side of your mold. Which I guess making coasters as a first attempt isn't a huge deal, but if you're doing a more mission critical piece, where you don't want to get your resin all over. Okay, my final layer is just a little on top of the dark blue. So we're going to mix again. I'm guesstimating about what I need last time, so 3/4 and 3/4. I got most of the bubbles out. There's still some, but I'm going to go ahead and add some of my dye. I don't know how much I actually need to add. I've done alcohol ink and I've done cake decorating, and I've learned from those just to start with a little bit, because it's easier to take away than it is to add more. So we'll try about 4 drops to see what it does. So obviously 4, nowhere near going to cut it, so we're going to do about another 8 more. Okay, we got our blue added and we've stirred. I think we got most of the big, wow. This will be our last addition. So I know because I had a lot of the first rounds that it's going to be not cover the whole bottom. So I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And I also know since I'm getting pretty full, the heat gun isn't going to be quite as useful now, but luckily the bottom has got a tiny bit of little dots, but not too bad. Well, we have our resin poured. Now a lot of it is a 24-hour cure time. The box, here's the box of the one I got here, says that cure time in the summer is about 8 to 12 hours or 12 to 20 in the winter. I'm winter. It's definitely very cold outside, but this room, as you can see, I'm dying in here because it faces south and it's just the warmest room in my house. So I'm guessing it's a good 74 or 5 in here. So I'm going to guess it's going to probably be more like the 12 hours, but we shall see. A lot of it's 24, so I'm not going to rush it. We'll just check back in the morning. And it said that this resin tends to do best in a well climate controlled area of 70 to 75, so this room is actually perfect. And I will also say, since this stuff is very sticky, that you probably want to clean up your mess right away and clean all your tools. I'd like to eventually get where I could use reusable silicone tools instead of having to be disposable. So I know I have to get over my ADHD and clean up now. And then another word of wisdom it gave is to cover up your project, because that way you don't get bugs or fur or any dust or anything else that could be in your house as it cures over those 12 hours. I own a Labrador Retriever, so there's a lot of dog fur that I deal with. So I'll cover these up and then we'll come back tomorrow and unmold and see, did I nail it or was this a complete dismal failure? We've given our resin some time to cure. I originally did the video of this morning and everything looks to be pretty set, so it's evening now. So I'm going to go ahead and try and to do mold these, and then we'll just let them continue to sit overnight. This is the left one, which is the one I had the vegetable oil in. It's a little cloudier looking than the other one. So I don't know if that's the vegetable oil, but it looks like it's coming straight out of this mold without any issues. It's a little oily, but it doesn't appear to be too bad. Some kind of weird textures along here. I'm guessing from where the oil was. You can see where the glitter got into it. Now we're going to try the one I did not use the vegetable oil on. It's a little tougher to get out, but it is less cloudy. And it actually did come out pretty clean. All that. And it has less, you can't see there's like oil, but it definitely has a little smoother. It definitely has a little bit less of a cloudy look. I'll take pictures and show them. It's probably still a little soft. So if I wasn't doing this for a video, I'd probably have let it sit longer, but I wanted to go ahead and get this portion done. But I can definitely see like the texture where the oil was. So I'm going to call that a lesson learned and get and order some actual legitimate mold release. So this is my first attempt at casting resin, and I'm going to say overall it was a success. I'm pretty happy with how well these turned out for my first attempt. It's hard, it's clear, relatively bubble free, and I have something that actually legitimately resembles a coaster. I'm going to call this a nailed it. Now go out, create something, and have fun trying new things.